If I'd ask you to describe Russia in one word, what would it be? Write it in the comments, it is really interesting to know. If you'd ask me to describe Russia in just one word, I'd say the Gulag. Why? Because it concentrates everything that is so Russian and that is so Soviet. Russian violence, brutality, disrespect to human rights multiplied by the possibilities of the communist totalitarian regime resulted in the creation of an awful network of death camps. The Gulag was the government agency in charge of the Soviet Union network of forced labor camps, and there were many of them. All started in Lenin era but continued during the rule of Stalin, reaching its peak in 1930-1950. Many English speakers still use word Gulag to name any camp of forced labor on the territory of Soviet Union. The Gulag is recognized as the major instrument of political suppression in Soviet Union. Among its convicts, there were many real criminals and even more political prisoners who were convicted by so-called NKVD troikas or other types of extrajudicial punishment. Do you know what NKVD troika was? Let me explain. This was a group of 3 people who issued sentences to people based on extremely simplified procedure. There was no trial, no opportunity to explain your deeds. Everything was decided by these 3 people, who were both jury and judge during the simplified and totally unfair process. The first camp that appeared in the network of Gulag was Solovki prison camp, and it appeared straightly after the Communist Revolution in 1920. In the 20s, the population of labor camps was approximately 100,000 people, but in 1940s there were already 1,500,000 people in them. From 1930s to 1953, 14 million people passed through the camps of Gulag and 4 million prisoners were kept in the colonies of Gulag. Approximately close to 2 million people died in the camps or closely after the relief of these camps because of extremely bad conditions of life. Between 1934 and 1940, the number of convicts with high education multiplied by 8. The number of intelligentsia among the prisoners of Gulag labor camps was terrifying. It was huge. And Soviet-era leaders were known for their negative attitudes to people with high education, high level of personal culture. That's why many of them were kept in such prisons for no serious reason. Sandormokh is a forest massif not far away from Medvezhegorsk in the Republic of Karelia. Between 1937 and 1938, thousands of convicts of Stalin's terror were executed here. 58 different nationalities were shot and buried in pits. According to available documentation, at least 6,000 people were executed in Sandormokh. Among them, hundreds of Ukrainian language writers, artists, directors that are now known as Executed Renaissance. Many of them, really famous people in Ukrainian history, died during a couple of days to commemorate a particular date in communist modern history. They were killed and their families did not know about that. They were executed without a true trial or any serious sentence, and their graves will never be found. In March 1940, there were 53 Gulag camps and more than 400 colonies that also belonged to the network of Gulag. Many of now known Russian cities and Kazakhstan cities were built as a result of the development of Gulag camp system. These are, for example, Karaganda, Norilsk, Vorkuta and Magadan. These are mining cities that appeared to correspond to the needs of Gulag camps and building the places for convicts. After the German invasion of Poland, which marked the beginning of the Second World War, Soviet Union acted actually as an ally of Nazi Germany and occupied the eastern part of Poland, also annexing territories of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and Moldova. According to the records, hundreds and thousands of Polish citizens and citizens of other occupied territories were arrested and sent to Gulag camps. During the Second World War, the population of Gulag camps declined rapidly because of starvation and extremely harsh conditions for work. As the military production had to grow, people were forced to work long hours and had 4 hours a day for rest. In 1942-1943, one of the prisoners remembered it was difficult to find anyone able to bury the dead person or to collect wood for fire. But this decline in the population of Gulag camps was not a problem for a long period of time. After the end of the Second World War and the victory of the Soviet Union in it, the population of labor camps grew really quickly, reaching 2.5 million by 1950. Interesting, why? Because when the Second World War ended, more than 2 million ex-Soviet or ex-Russian repatriants were forcefully sent back to the USSR. According to the results of Yalta Conference, lots of Russian prisoners of war that were kept by Germans returned back home, and at home they were treated as traitors and sent to Gulag. I continue to repeat that there is no difference between the Nazi regime and the Soviet regime, and let me give you one more illustration. After the end of the Second World War, on the territory of Germany, now controlled by Soviet Union, 10 labor special camps were organized. Guess where? In the previous buildings of Nazi concentration camp like Sachsenhaus or Buchenwald. According to approximate estimates of German government, close to 65,000 people, Germans, died in these camps or while being transported to them. Because actually transportation to the camps that sometimes took months was another way to get rid of unnecessary convicts. In 1948, a special network of special camps was organized within Gulag. They like this word, special military operations, special camps. They were for special convicts, mainly political prisoners, guilty of espionage, terrorism, and traditionally nationalism, for example, Ukrainian, which means they did not want to be Russified. And these people were kept in really bad conditions. Such political prisoners were not used for economic reasons, and traditionally they were given the hardest work in the worst parts of Gulag network. They were not allowed to communicate with their family, and 1 letter a year was permitted. Also, they could not have photos of their loved ones or read books. This is awful, especially for people who once belonged to the intelligentsia class. Also, after a prisoner served a term in such a camp, he was not allowed to take a number of jobs, and he was not allowed to settle in a number of cities, of course, the capital and other prosperous regions of Russia. But the problems of where to live or what to do after you exit Gulag was not a big problem. For many people, survival was the main problem. And directly after the death of Stalin, the system of Gulag started to dismantle. But the amnesty was first granted to criminal prisoners and to those political convicts who served a short term, less than 5 years. The rest continued living in such conditions until they die. It is only 6 years later, in 1960, the Gulag system was completely abolished. But this does not mean that the system of forced labor camps disappeared with Gulag. To some extent, it is present in modern Russian Federation. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the winner of the Nobel Prize on Literature, who survived 8 years in Gulag incarceration, was able to describe his experience in the book that many of you know, the Gulag Archipelago. It was published in 1973 and described the realities of life in Gulag and how people were made work to death. Apart from really difficult work, these special settlers, as they were called by Soviet system, did not have enough food and did not have access to medicine or medicines that they need. And their main task was to survive. Those who were weaker died really quickly. Those who were stronger tried to escape, but some tried to protest. You can guess, analyzing modern Ukrainian history, that perhaps there were lots of Ukrainians among the convicts of the Gulag system. And you are right, every fifth person was Ukrainian, or maybe even more. And they were extremely active in the social life of the political convicts. They were trying to organize groups to protest, to demand something. Norilsk uprising and Vorkuta uprising took place in 1953. And all of them were led by Ukrainians. The Kengir uprising happened the next year in 1954 and demonstrated that convicts have some powers and can influence the decisions inside the Gulag system. And multiplied by the death of Stalin, these reasons led to the future abolishment of the Gulag system. The Gulag is an extremely dark page of modern global history. It is the story you don't want to hear, but you have to know. It seems like the invention of really past days of our totalitarian period. But no, modern-day Russia attacking Ukraine planned to organize lots of labor camps on the territory of Ukrainian regions. Planned to invite best Ukrainian people, intellectuals, patriots, politicians, educators to such camps and to erase them from the face of this planet. We are not safe until Russia is Russia. And we have to know more about our enemy. My name is Anna and I'm a Ukrainian, and I know a lot about this dark period of our history. If you want to know more, subscribe.